Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to talk about one of the big transits of the week, which is the upcoming conjunction of Mercury to Pluto in the late degrees of Capricorn. So this transit is forming over the next couple of days and will be coming through by, it's about Friday. You should be feeling it through the rest of this week. And so we're going to take a look at that. We're going to look at 5 archetypal themes that often manifest around Mercury-Pluto dynamics. That could be a square or a conjunction in this case, or an opposition or whatever. We're going to talk about that combination, 5 themes to watch for, and then 3 insights or life lessons that I feel like I hear people talk about quite frequently, especially when Pluto is transiting their natal Mercury. So we'll get into that today. And before we do, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your comments, especially if you have this placement natally or you have a story to share this week. You can always use the hashtag grabbed if you have a story about this transit that you want to share for a future storytelling episode. We love those. Welcome and encourage that. Also, you can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. I'm going to take you over there right now because the masterclass series is starting on February 17th. For those of you who have a little background in astrology already, you may enjoy these advanced classes. Go to the courses tab, scroll down, click on the masterclass series to learn more about it. It is a 4-course menu. We have a spring series, a summer series. I guess this would be the winter series. Then we have the spring, summer, and fall. So each masterclass features about 10 hours worth of material that happens over the course of 4 online seminars. The first series that we're doing starting on February 17th is a 4-part series on the ancient mysteries of the moon cycle. We're going to be looking at the phasal dynamics between the sun and the moon in the birth chart and how the various phases of the moon were looked at and understood by ancient astrologers and how we can use them in reading birth charts. In the spring, we're going to be looking at the cycles of Venus and Mercury. In the summer, we're going to be looking at zodiacal releasing. And in the fall, we're going to be looking at the topic of temperament and personality in the birth chart. So if you are someone with a little background in traditional or Hellenistic astrology and you want to go deeper with any of these subjects, you can sign up for any of them a la carte. You can do them individually. It's a little bit more expensive if you do it that way, whereas if you sign up for the entire program and all 4 of the seminar series, you save the most. We do have a payment plan if you need it, and also there is a need-based tuition option if you need a little help because you're on a fixed budget or you're hurting financially for whatever reason. We like to make sure that all of our programs are accessible, and that's what the Kickstarter accomplishes. So every time the Kickstarter goes well, then it reduces our need to have bottom line, so we can open up those programs to people of different economic backgrounds and make them more accessible. So anyway, if you have any questions about any of that, feel free to email us info@nightlightastrology.com. All right, let's go ahead and we'll put the real-time clock up as always, and let's take a look. So here we are on Tuesday, February 7th, and we can see that we have Mercury coming into the 3-degree range of Pluto. That's the engagement range when it's within 3 degrees. So let's advance the chart a little bit. We're going to see on Wednesday, they come to within about 2 degrees, Thursday coming to within 1 degree, and Friday coming through the exact conjunction into Saturday when Mercury will pass into Aquarius, and then they are officially sort of separated, especially once one of the planets crosses the sign boundary like that. You'll see that often the conjunctions symbolism is going to fade away noticeably once Mercury changes signs. Now, it's interesting because this conjunction is happening not far off from Pluto also changing signs into Aquarius, which is something that we'll be talking about in the weeks to come. There's a lot more to say about that. We've already done some videos on that. And yesterday we opened up the week by talking about Saturn's upcoming entrance into Pisces. So some of those big outer planetary shifts or slow-moving planetary shifts are definitely going to take up more of our time and attention in the weeks to come. But today, I think it's well worth it to take a look at Pluto and Mercury this week, since that forms probably easily the biggest transit of the week, in my opinion. There are 5 themes that I want to talk about with this combination. Now, you could take this video and you could apply this to Pluto transiting your natal Mercury, and just about any type of aspect. The aspects will change the dynamic a little bit, but mostly what today is like sort of a universal look at Mercury-Pluto combinations and what they tend to bring. So 5 themes and then 3 insights. These insights are just life lessons that I've noticed around Mercury and Pluto, especially in the lives of my clients as they deal with massive Pluto to Mercury transits in their life. I went through one as well, and these ideas are reflective of some of the things I learned, and again, things that I've seen clients and students learn with Mercury-Pluto dynamics. So anyway, let's get into it. 5 themes to watch for. The first one is revelation. So the word revelation, I think we were going to get through a day without an etymology. We have to bring up the etymological once in a while. Etymological roots are one of my favorite things. So anyway, revelation coming from a disclosure. So the root of the word means a disclosure of information or knowledge by a divine or supernatural agency. But it can also just mean from Latin revelare, which is to unveil, to uncover, or to lay bare, as in the word reveal. So there's like both a religious meaning of the word. When we think of the word revelation, people often, by the way, get the book of Revelation wrong. They'll say the book of Revelations, plural. It's not. It's a singular. So, by the way, the biblical book is called Revelation. It's one revelation. It's a series of visions, but it's John's revelation from the island of Patmos, which I actually visited one time when I was on a trip with that my dad led when he was in the ministry. We went and followed the Apostle Paul's footsteps around the Mediterranean, and got to visit the island of Patmos, where John was prisoner of the Roman Empire, if I remember correctly. And anyway, he had his vision there, and scribe translated it or transcribed it in a cave that we visited. It was interesting. Anyway, it's revelation singular. So the word revelation, for most people when they hear it, will be like the blasting of trumpets and the revealing of, cosmic apocalyptic truth or something like that. And the funny thing is that Mercury-Pluto can be like that. It might be a mini apocalypse in the soap opera of our lives, but like the truth bombs that Mercury-Pluto drops will sometimes feel like an apocalypse. It will feel like a revealing, an unconcealing of something that has remained hidden. And sometimes it has heavy, like nuclear transformative effect, that what is said or seen or understood or realized or communicated, an email, a letter, an announcement, something that comes up and it feels like the blasting of the angel's trumpet, and it feels like a foundation shaking kind of truth or piece of insight or information. It doesn't have to be that dramatic, though. I find that oftentimes you'll just like, there's a really funny story, and I don't remember where I heard this one, but it basically was like someone I think this was in my own yard. Anyway, we were fixing, like when we moved into this house, they have like an irrigation system for like these little lines that go out and go into the little flower boxes on the windowsills, right? So it's like kind of like a hose, and they have this little drip lines. And anyway, we were trying to replace something because it was broken, and it was a Pluto-Mercury dynamic, and we ended up discovering an old buried is this, now I'm forgetting if this was our story or if this was someone else's story. I think it was ours. I think we found an old control, like a buried control system for like a really old irrigation system that had been in the yard. And it was a Mercury-Pluto thing. And it was like this old buried piece of technology. And it really wasn't like symbolically it was interesting. I feel like at that time, I remember that image coming up, or the story that I heard that someone shared, I remember having an impact on me, though. And you guys will have to tell me if that was like a grabbed episode or if I'm remembering that from I swear to God, that was in our own yard. Anyway, so such things could have an impact on you symbolically. And it doesn't, like, oftentimes you'll just see like very powerful dream images coming up, or some synchronistic thing that sort of pops up from the subterranean or the Plutonian underworld, and it speaks somehow. And you don't always know exactly what it's saying or why it's there. But upon further reflection, sometimes it's as though there's a kind of Plutonian messenger that's arriving and heralding something. So watch for the Plutonian messengers this week. Sometimes it shows up just in terms of like a movie you watch. There's a long time ago when I was living in New York City, I got to know the actor. His name is Penn Badgley. And I got to know him because he came and did the ayahuasca monologues, which I directed. It was like a theater show where people came and did storytelling about healing experiences they had with ayahuasca. And we always tried to pull in, some celebrities here or there. We had Josh Radnor come from How I Met Your Mother, and got to know him. I worked with him in his story because I directed the show, and got to know Penn and his story. And so anyway, Penn is in this show now, and I want to say it's called You. And it's a creepy show. I think he's a serial killer. That's what it is. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. Anyway, so I noticed that there's it popped up on my Netflix that there's the new, I think it's the last season of You coming out. And I just thought, oh, that's interesting. It's going to be coming out right around the time that Mercury conjoins Pluto. Yeah, that's fascinating. It's that kind of thing though, where you watch some dark, you watch a show that's dark, but somehow the themes archetypally, or a dark film or something, it could be random. You could watch Jaws, and it could remind you about the fact that nature is sometimes cruel, which could then translate into it might burst some kind of overly naive idea that you have in some totally different sphere of life. Well, thank you, Jaws on a Friday night, or thank you, Penn Badgley's serial killer series, or whatever it is. You see something, it's dark, it's heavy, and it doesn't seem related to anything else in your life. You're taking it in almost as a form of entertainment, but then it has some ripple effect in some other area of your life. Mercury-Pluto often works like that. So just notice the kind of dark-winged messenger coming in this week, which I think is really best to think of Mercury-Pluto as a helper, as a guide. Mercury is the guide of souls. I don't think of Pluto as scary. People are like, oh, someone the other day, I had a client, and it was really funny. They said that Pluto was going to bring a baseball bat to their life. And I was like, yeah. And I get it. I totally get why that image would be used, but it's we got to work on our metaphors here. Pluto is not out to get us. And Pluto is truly, when Mercury and Pluto get together, you just think Pluto is, Mercury's reaching down into the depths of a subterranean and mysterious landscape, and will reveal something. It will disclose something. So think of that first, revelation as a theme this week. Number 2, bottom line, I put / Machiavellian thinking. Excuse me. So how does Machiavellian thinking work? And you guys have heard me use this phrase for years on my channel now, but it can be very Pluto and Capricorn, first of all. When someone sits down with you and you get that feeling right away that they have something in mind that they want from you. It's a bottom line, and they're trying to, everything in the conversation, you can feel it right away. They're trying to shift and steer this toward getting something out of me. There's something that they want, or something that they hope I can give them or connect them with, or whatever. When I get emails from people, trying to sell me something, but they present themselves like, hey, I was just checking out your channel and I thought you could use some SEO, blah, blah, blah. There's this feeling right away that you get where it's like, this is someone that's trying to, they'll do whatever they have to do or say to just get to some end, so the end justifies the mean. So that kind of bottom line, ruthless, cunning, plotting, calculated, strategic, maybe a little tricky to notice, or it could slide under the radar, but it's sort of Machiavellian. It has I'm just going to get what I want. So be careful of that. The ends justifying the means. I'll do anything. I'll stop at nothing. A little obsessive. So that one I would be careful of. And be careful of it within yourself too. Don't just think, well, that's clearly I just have to watch out from that in other people, because I think it's these things, the shadows are almost always easiest, that we're most susceptible to them in ourselves, and usually not to the degree that you're hearing them talked about, like say on my channel, or somewhere else. Someone gives you a shadow quality of a planetary combination, you go, well, I'm a good person, I'm not gonna, but Sheila, watch for her, or whatever, Instead, it's like, just note that usually, like if in this case, bottom line Machiavellian thinking, the sort of obsessive, ruthless, I'll do whatever it takes, and I'm sort of driven and I'm not letting on, or people can't exactly see how intensely I'm driving at something, I'm sort of obsessed with it. That may sound really extreme in the way that I'm like sort of caricaturizing it. I'm like making it into like a goofy looking character here using all of these adjectives and blowing it up into like a portrait. Usually though, the way that these things appear in us is like at half that volume, and it's subtle, and it's in voices that are familiar to us. It's not describing itself in the way I'm describing it. It's a voice that you know, and that can present, so it'll be very compelling. And so, just remember that most of these things that you hear, the shadowy, dark things, and you might think, well, I'm a good person. And yes, you are a good person, and hopefully so am I. you know and we're susceptible to these things, and usually they're going to be about half as loud as it sounds, compared to the way I'm putting it. Number 3 would be a rich, fertile idea. Never underestimate the power of Mercury-Pluto to come up with ideas that are fertile, strategies, ideas, forms of business, technologies, inventions. Mercury was the ruler of inventors and inventions in ancient astrology. So it's a very, and when it hits Pluto, it's like deep, rich, fertile. So fertile ideas, rich, lucrative, or it doesn't have to be in business or financial either. It could just be an idea that if you plant it, it will grow. What's that phrase? Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Right. You guys know that phrase? It's a little bit like that, especially in Capricorn, an earth sign that loves like things that will, you can build a skyscraper, you can climb up the mountain, so a rich, fertile idea planted now, developmentally, slowly over a period of time, this thing has legs. So watch for that. All right. Number 4 would be subterranean thoughts, topics, and conversations. And I sort of mentioned this a little bit earlier when I was talking about revelation, but basically just watch for the need that your soul has sometimes to get real, to get deep, to get controversial, to get into the taboo stuff, to get into the edges, to go nuclear, I think we, especially here in Minnesota, as I'm reflecting on like the Minnesota nice culture, I was reflecting on this in the world of sports because I'm a Vikings fan, and I've noticed that many sports fans in Minnesota, once the team doesn't do well, there's a very like, oh shucks, well golly, good job guys, maybe better luck next year, we'll just bring the band back together. And there's a real deep discomfort in the Minnesota sports media that I've noticed with being kind of ruthless and being like, well, maybe that quarterback's not good, or maybe his contract's too high for how old he is, or maybe that veteran is aging and you should cut him or trade him. And, it's like, so I think sometimes we're all wired that way. Let's be very polite. Let's not rock the boat here. But that's not what Pluto and what Mercury-Pluto people, if you have Mercury and Pluto, that's not going to cut it. If it's everything that's life-giving is very close to death. Everything that feels like it is deeply and intensely empowering is not far from effort and struggle. I think this is, it's not always true. There's a lot of life-giving things that aren't about effort and struggle. I should qualify that. But there is a sense in like if you're a runner, I'm not a runner, but if you were a runner, then you'll know, because I've had some periods in my life when I've ran regularly. There's a place where the effort, you break through it, and suddenly it's like you're high. You hit like a runner's high. I'm sure there are some people listening who know what I'm talking about. So there's effort, and then breakthrough into bliss. That's in that sort of nuclear moment where the effort turns into ecstasy, where the struggle turns into catharsis and ecstasy. That is a very Mercury-Pluto kind of space. So just keep that in mind, and the need that your soul may have this week to kind of go deep and hard and intense into things that are dark, difficult, but somehow by doing so, there are breakthroughs possible that are very empowering and life-giving. Finally, we have the topic of purgation. And I'm going to say purgation in general, but probably around the mind, communication, speech. And by purgation, you could say it's like, like popping a zit metaphorically, or you could say that it's, eliminating a bacteria, or it's bringing something up and out to be cleansed, healed, and so forth. I think that there's something about this that can be, it's like getting something off your mind, getting something spoken, releasing something that if you hold it in, it'll make you sick. So I think the idea of purgation and cleansing around mind, speech, communication, those are also things that come to mind this week. So those are my 5. Now we have 3 insights. Now these are like, maybe you could connect them to the themes of the day, these 5 themes, but more broadly speaking, what do I see people learning as life lessons when they have major Pluto-Mercury transits? Number 1, what you think of me is none of my business. Now, I think this is a phrase that comes from 12-step programs. I'm not sure, but I feel like I have, we have in my broader family, I have people who are in 12-step programs, and so on. And so I've heard a lot of different, phrases and teachings that come from those environments. One of them, I believe, is what you think of me is none of my business. It couldn't be more Mercury-Pluto. Sometimes people offer, like as a public figure, I shouldn't complain about it too much. It's just part of the job. But like you wouldn't believe, I'd say a dozen or so times a week, I get people that, will offer unsolicited advice to me, whether it's about health or parenting or blogging or YouTubing or astrology. And it's just like, yeah, this is what I think of you. This is how I think you ought to be better, blah, blah, blah. And, what I found over the years is that, sometimes people have a way of offering their thoughts that are really constructive and super helpful. And I love that. But then there are people who are just trolling, and not just that, but in your personal life. I mean, like, what to speak of whatever people are running their mouth about that you don't know on social media somewhere about what you post or whatever. But sometimes you have friends or people in your life that are like, I think you ought to do this, or I think you ought to be more like this, or just offering you unsolicited opinions about how you ought to be living or whatever. Or there might be family members who are gossiping about you, or people at your workplace who talk about you behind your back. Oftentimes those painful dynamics will come up around Mercury-Pluto transits. And what I've found that people are often saying when Pluto and Mercury reveal to you what other people have been thinking or saying about you is the mantra, well, you know what? Whatever you think about me is really none of my business. And it's a mantra worth repeating if you find yourself as like, if you end up feeling sort of targeted or being poked or prodded by someone, especially with unsolicited opinions or advice about you, your character, your psychology, your business, your family, like whatever. So that's a good one to remember with Mercury-Pluto, because sometimes the things that come up will be painful and hurtful. And you have to realize that, sometimes the feedback's helpful and transformative. Sometimes it's best to like just stay out of the, it's like, it's none of my business what you think about me. Number 2, and you can find how liberating that is to release yourself from attachments to what other people say or think about you or want from you or whatever. Can be very healing. And in that way, there's a kind of mental independence that you gain from Pluto Mercury sometimes. Number 2, just because it's a powerful idea doesn't mean I need to share it. I think that there's something to be said about sharing things. I love to share thoughts and ideas. I'm a podcaster, right? So this is what I do all the time. But there are, I would say, for every, let's say, podcast that I make, there are usually numerous ideas that I thought about trying to communicate in my talk of the day that instead I decide to just I just got to let them keep cooking for a while. Like just put them on the back burner, let them simmer, let them just kind of, soak in some more flavors or whatever, some need for further cooking and development. Or sometimes there's ideas that come that are so brilliant and beautiful. But the biggest and most important gift they have to give you is the gift they give when you don't share them and keep them just for yourself as a treasure, just for you. Because when you do that, you go around, you have a secret storehouse of beautiful things that are in your mind that gives you a kind of confidence that people look at you and they can tell, well, that person has a lot of beautiful things in their mind, and they're not showing me all of them. Uh, for most people, that adds a kind of brilliance, attractiveness, appeal, interest, and magnetism to the things that you do choose to share or say. So just remember, with Mercury-Pluto, the temptation is always there when Mercury-Pluto comes up with powerful thoughts, and they're erupting volcanically, and it's like, well, I have to go share it. I need to say it. I need to confess, or something like that. Uh, Keep some of them. Keep some of them as special treasures. Diversify your interior life. Decorate the walls of your psyche with those beautiful insights. Don't share all of them. It doesn't mean you have to become stoic and not say a word or share anything, but keep a few for yourself. And I found that the development of greater interior privacy and depth is one of the greatest things that people tend to take away from Pluto-Mercury transits. Number 3, what we constantly complain about is a secret passageway that we should explore. I have found, and this is one of my big takeaways from the Pluto transit that I had. So I had Pluto in early Capricorn opposing my natal Mercury in Cancer. But I've seen this same exact kind of theme in the lives of many of my clients and students over the years. When Pluto hits Mercury, you'll notice that there are things that you become the obsessive complaints. They become like salt licks. Like the dog that can't stop licking the salt on your hand or your arm or something. So your tongue is like bloodied because you're dissatisfied, disgruntled, upset about the same thing. And it could be about yourself, or it could be about someone or something. Like my complaints about the astrology industry, or my complaints about how people are not doing the houses right or something. Like, as an astrologer, there's like a laundry list of things that really get under my skin. And back in the day when I had my Pluto to Mercury transit, some of it was the publishing world, because I was going through the process of editing and publishing my book. And it was also, well, there was a lot of things, but like the new age culture, for example, really got under my skin. I would get so frustrated and irritated by what felt to me like a swamp, like what is it called? Like a bog of new age swampy ideas that were just like, I just can't stand this. And I'm inundated by it because of the field that I'm in the psychedelic culture that I was writing in all the time, and yoga studios and so on and so forth. So I would get so angry, and so like, I'm just, Pluto Mercury, one of the things that happened was, of course, I was working with ayahuasca quite regularly, and the ayahuasca would really just, sometimes just push my face right into my own stuff, And in this case, I remember during the Pluto Mercury transit, it just was like, why are you getting so irritated about this? And there's things, I'm not the kind of person who's like, well, if you get irritated about anything, there's no one to blame but yourself. Like, I don't like that kind of like pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. There's nobody to blame but yourself. But at times when we get like obsessively disturbed and irritated by something, might be worth it to take a deeper look at all of that. I found within myself that when I looked very deeply at my irritation with various elements of New Age culture during my Pluto opposite Mercury transit, that deep within there were insecurities, jealousies, resentments, just all sorts of stuff. Just like, so one of the takeaways that I've had and that I've seen, again, like I said, in the lives of many of my clients, is that the things that, like, your constant gripes, the constant sore spots, the things that you just can't, like the salt lick that you just can't stop licking it until your tongue's freaking, chapped, explore those ideas, explore those images. I don't know what they'll say. I'm not saying that, if you do that, you'll figure out, I don't know what you'll figure out, but I just know that the images and the thoughts and ideas and the people that we constantly find ourselves irritated or annoyed by, there's something there for us. There are jewels and treasures in those dislikes if we can spend unattached time contemplating, observing, and just allowing those images to spend time with them. That's it. So, and that is not at all to try to, like, you may be irritated because someone is like abusive, right? Well, that's a pretty good thing to be irritated about. So this is not meant to be one of those like what do they call it? Blame the victim things. It's like, well, sometimes you're irritated because someone is taking advantage of you or someone is just being a jerk or whatever. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, for me, for example, I would say that it's like, I've learned to be very careful about the elements of the astrological industry that I allow to get under my skin. Because if I find that I'm like constantly complaining about certain people or things or what someone else says or does about Mercury retrograde and how it's so wrong, and like if I spend time with those things that are getting under my skin, that are becoming like rashes in, like rashes in my jock, it's like there's like getting my panties in a bundle. Is that the phrase? that I'll learn a lot. I learn a lot. So anyway, just a piece of advice with Mercury-Pluto. Look at the obsessive dislikes that you have or criticisms that you have. Explore them, open them up, spend time with them, and there's treasure inside. I'll just leave it at that and let you guys take that where you will. So, okay, that's what I've got for today. I hope that these themes and insights were useful for you. I hope that you will have a great rest of your day today. We will be back again for Dao De Jing, for astrologers, and more content as the week goes on. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.